sometimes people look at the computer screen and depending on whatever software you're looking at, they don't understand really what the surface or the model is actually doing. You end up taking a 3D model and then you mill it in clay and foam and whatever you want, and you look at it in real life, and usually the comment that comes back is, did you do something to the data? It doesn't look like what I expected it to look like. All of this visualization software that's shown up in the past 3-4 years has definitely helped to bridge that gap. So now you really can look at something in a realistic manner, you can interact with it, you can rotate around, so it's definitely helping, I think, a huge amount in the design workflow. Right? If they say that a still image is worth 1,000 words, then maybe a moving image you could say is worth 1,000 times more.
With this project, the goal was to make those laser cut papers to really come alive. Paper is a paper, it's really just straightforward. But how do you create a life out of a paper? So with the paper, you fold, maybe you cut some stuff out, and by folding it and by making a shape or molding it, I feel like I can give this piece of paper some life. So the play between the paper and light really becomes, it's like a really playful relationship. So you have a light inside, you have a paper, and there's a light coming out, or there's some shadow that's created. Well, but if you add multiple lights onto it, many layers of it, or even many colors of it, maybe some red shades, some violet, some yellow, then it even add more interactivity, and then just creates that much more interesting relationship between the light, the paper, shadows. The material really drove how the shape is formed. So it's like totally different type of thinking behind it.
Like when you look at the bubble wrap from my standpoint, it's actually a lot more complex than it looks. When I look at this pattern, it's very organic actually. There's almost nothing similar. I mean, you look at every corner, every side, and it's different. And even the contours and the shape where they meet each other are completely different. A challenge in itself, because first off, if you were to model this whole thing, there's just thousands and thousands of little strands in here, and that's a lot of geometry. I mean, we're talking like millions of polys with that, and anybody that models knows that would be a nightmare too. But we still have to give it that 3D kind of look, the transparency. And there's also like these, I'm sure if you looked at some of the close-ups, there are, it's like this fishing line, and it distorts whatever's behind it, and the light too.
So I chose to apply Kova on the part of the shoe that typically we use this kind of technical fabric, and Kova itself is a very technical material, and it actually wraps really well around the geometry of the shoe. Natural to come up with that theme. I mean, I grew up in the 80s and beginning of the 90s, and all that look and feel, including the grid that you see in the video. The grid is actually the way that the 80s make everything look 3D, even though it wasn't.
Well, the big challenge on creating the wet and dry shader was how to get a splash looking supernatural without simulating everything. approach to this is you use a mask. A mask is usually black and white, so thinking about how could we film something like a splash in black and white with high contrast and being able to clear that pretty quickly without going over every frame manually, we came up with, just like, let's take black foil, put it on the floor and then spill milk on it, and we get the exact same thing we are looking for from the technical side, the black and white mask, just from this. How to get this reaction you get from a shape memory, you usually get from heat, into a virtual scene. So how to get heat as a non-existent property in the virtual world to show up in this virtual scene. The idea we came up with was to take a light source, as it's usually a heat source also in nature, and make the material react on that.
So with some of the research we were looking at with the shape memory alloy, obviously it's being able to kind of, morph a surface, and some of the stuff we looked at even got into clothing, and in the examples that we saw, the clothing had like wires that were kind of running through, so it's not like a solid piece of alloy, it's more of these wires that can kind of like bend and transform. And I guess the one that worked best for this project was some various filters in Photoshop, but kind of the stained glass filter created these geometric kind of five-sided shapes that were coming out, and they almost individually look like controls. And then furthermore, what I did was space them out so that they were kind of spread out towards the outside of the wall, and then as you moved to the middle area where you actually interact, they became more populated and more detailed, so it kind of directed you to come interact in that area.
As you can see, this material is made of these little single strains. You can see here, and all these come together to this overall volumetric appearance of the material. So we need to get from the look of a single strain to the overall look that shows the whole material covering your wall. Well, if you would create a geometry, the first thing would be somebody would have to model this kind of random appearance of this whole material. So the idea was to get this overall appearance into a shader with basically two big challenges. The one thing, we wanted to have a close-up of the material showing the single strain, showing, okay, it's made of these strains and so on, but we also wanted to pull out and have a shot from 10-20 feet away to see how this material looks like covering a bigger area.
Very nice. See, that's it. It's like, I knew you would just nail it.
It really becomes this core group and just this.
That was fantastic.
I mean, you.
That was fantastic.
It
I
was.
know
That's good. Okay.
Are there any particular artists or designers or individuals that you're now? Awesome.
Yeah. So that kind of leads us into our next question. That was good.